Okay, um, start from beginning. Now, last time we started discussing ethics. We initially said how the term ethics developed from the Greek term ethos. We said the meaning of ethos is basically the character. Then um, we discuss range of ethics, personal ethics, professional ethics, social ethics, and many. So under these subjects, we basically discussing professional ethics. And then we move to the theoretical and applied ethics. We identify the difference between theoretical ethics and applied ethics. Then we look at the various, we look at the categorization of theories developed under this area into three, based on these three questions. Three categories we identified are teleological or a good-based ethics. The other one, duty or a deontological ethics, and virtue ethics. So we expect to discuss only these three ethical theories. Under one, we said the good-based theory. As an example, we said utilitarian theory. And that utilitarian theory we already discussed. And the based on the duty theory or a deontological theory was said, we will discuss duty theories and right theories. Finally, the virtue theories. So to recap the utilitarian theory, we said utilitarian theory basically look at the actions that foster happiness or a pleasure. So those actions implement, and if any action creates unhappiness or a harm, not to implement. Basically, utilitarian theory is a theory of morality that advocates, that accept actions that foster happiness or of pleasure and oppose actions that cause unhappiness or harm. Then we said, so sometimes because of our decision, part of the society may be happy, the other part is not unhappy. As per the utilitarian theory, we have to take decision based on most people, getting happiness or a pleasure, so that decision we need to make. Yeah. Then we identified some of the limitations with this theory. One is basically some of the actions, the results may come in future. So we don't know whether that will create happiness among people or the pleasure among people or make harm to the people. We also said sometimes it gives crazy decision conclusions. If you look at this example of a patient who is having good organs and 4 patients having problems with heart, lungs, kidney, and liver, then can we get one person's all the four organs and implant those four patients and kill the one person and just save the life of four people. So that you can't do it. But as per the utilitarian theory, that is an ethical action. Theory, utilitarian Can you all hear? Now can you all hear? Okay. Um, from where you all didn't hear. Okay, I'll uh, again explain. Now, we know the utilitarian theory. Utilitarian theory basically describing our action, our moral is based on the happiness of the most number of people. If you put into a scale, if many people happy because of some of your decision, so you take that action. The theory accept there will be more people, some people who are unhappy with your decision. We discussed last time as an example, a construction of a dam. So some people may unhappy because we may have to displace those people's residences. But as a country, so it will give a benefit for people who are doing agriculture, for people who are eating or consuming agricultural products. So a lot of people get benefits. So as per the utilitarian theory, we have to take that decision. And then we discuss the drawbacks. So because of those drawbacks, there are many theories developed. The other theory that we are discussing is the Kant theory, or we say sometimes Kant theory. Now, the Kant theory is duty theory. This duty theory states that we each have some duties to other people. If you all can't hear, please let me know, because I may not look at frequently your messages. Huh? Now, the Kant is arguing that what separated us from other animal, right? How we and animals are separated, that is mainly because of our ability to think rationally. He says animals are driven by impulses and they are irrational. Yeah. As humans, however, we can reason, make decisions independent of our desires. Sometimes we our like is something, but our decision is different to that because we think rationally. Yeah. We can rise above animal instinct. What do you mean by instinct? Instinct means instinct, involuntary response by animals, resulting in a predictable and relatively fixed behavior pattern. So animals' behavior pattern driven by instinct, and it is predictable. Always when you jump into a lion's cage, the same results. Instinctive behavior is an inherited mechanism that serves to promote their survival. The animals or a species. Yeah. Sometimes we say the people also behaving like animals because they don't control their impulses, instinct. They just act based on instinct, right? So now the Kant argument, the Kant thought that it was possible to develop a consistent moral system by using reasons. The Kantian ethics, therefore, it says that the morality of an action depends on moral law that is universal and absolute and not on the consequences of action. Now, in our utilitarian theory, the theory is based on the consequences of our action. Because of our action, whether people get happiness or pleasure, or whether people get dissatisfaction or they will get harm. So based on that only we took the decision under utilitarian theory. But here it is saying actions are independent of consequences. Consequences can happen. So whatever the thing can happen because of our action. But if it is right here today and it is right tomorrow also in different location, right? For an example, telling truth, right? He believed some acts were absolutely always wrong. Example, telling lies always wrong. For example, he defended the idea that it is wrong to lie to ex-murderer knocking on your door asking where Bobby is hiding. Now you know that a murderer coming with axe and he is going to kill a person called Bob, and you know that. He knocks your door and asking, where is Bob? So you know that where Bob is hiding. But you can't tell lie based on this duty theory. Our duty is basically to tell the truth all the time. So you tell. So that is this theory. So it is a shortcoming. Yeah. So the Kant theory basically consistent, everywhere same. But utilitarian theory may be different. Yeah. In some location, for an example, let's say we want to build a cinema. In a prominent location, so where a lot of people are living. So that may be disturbing their residence places. And then, but if you build the same cinema in a different location, the people get benefit. So that action is basically depends on the consequences. But here, as per duty theory, if it is right, everywhere it is right. So now people having little bit of confusion. What is right, what is wrong? So the Kant is explaining his theory. The Kantian ethics are a set of moral principles which applies to all human beings universally, irrespective of the context or situation. That's the same thing that we discuss. So it is another way of presenting the Kantian theory. Look carefully. Kantian ethics are a set of moral principles which applies to human beings
universally, irrespective of the context or a situation. So, whether the murderer coming with the axe asking Bob, whether some person is asking to find out, to invite for a lunch or a dinner, always you are telling Bob is there, right? The person is hiding here or person is staying here. The Kantian theory is that. This means many people agree with the general idea of certain duties. Now, this Kantian theory accept widely in general. The difficulty lies in coming up with these details of what these duties ought to be. Now, what are the duties? Now, telling truth, always, yes, one duty. What are other duties? It's difficult to figure it out. Kant perspective is that something can only be considered a duty if it could be willed for all people to do. If everybody think to do, everybody like to do that action, right? Then Kant also thinking that is a duty. If you also wants to do something, if your friend also you want to do the same thing, if your enemy also wants to do the same thing, and I also wants to do the same thing, then that is the duty as per the Kant perspective. Now the question arises, does the society benefit if everyone will do the duty? If everybody wants to do the same thing, will it get the benefit? We don't know. Therefore, there is another philosopher tries to get around this problem by creating the prima facie duties. Prima facie duties mean he listed out the duties that you need to perform. Yeah. He says there are duties that every rational, reflective person would accept. Yeah. Everybody clear so far? Any question? If you have a question, we will clear it out right now because the next assignment is basically on ethics, right? You'll need to score points, marks, and even in the exams as well. Right. Now, the Kantian theory, the issue we identify is to identify what's the duties. So because of that, the Ross, another philosopher, defined the duties. Ross identified 5 prima facie duties that represent our main moral commitments. What is prima facie? Based on the first principle, immediately. If it's immediately right, that's right. The first one, a duty of fidelity. That is one of the moral that we need to perform. The fidelity means you have to keep promises and you have to be truthful. Right? The Ross is also the Rossian theory is not different to Kantian theory. You have to remember that. The Ross basically adding something on top of the Kantian theory. Okay? The Kant also saying always you have to be truthful. As an example, the Kant basically saying your moral has to be universal, irrespective of context or a situation. So here Rosen is saying, yes, your moral has to be universal, irrespective of context or situation. These are the morals. One is you have to be truthful. The second one, the duty of reparation. What does it mean? That to make up for wrong done to others. If you done something wrong, correct it. We may sometimes taking decisions thinking that it is right, but later on we realize that our decision is wrong. Then you correct it. That is called the duty of reparation. The other one, duty of gratitude. What does it mean? When others do things that benefits us, and to reciprocate when possible. That means you you basically um, give the feedback, not the feedback, actually the same amount of the same way the other person did it. Yeah. So when other people doing something great to society, you also do the something similar to the society, right? Duty of gratitude. The other duty, to promote a maximum of aggregate good. So you have to, or we have to increase the overall good in the world. So we have to do more and more good thing to the world. The other one, a duty of maleficence, or we say not to harm others. What do you mean by maleficence? What does it mean by non-maleficence? The duty of non-maleficence, right? Not to harm others. Maleficence means harm, so not to harm others. For an example, a physician, a doctor, medical doctor. So at whatever comes should not harm the patient. Yeah. Now we'll compare the theory, two theories that we learned, Kantianism and the utilitarianism. What are the similarities? What are the differences? Look at here. Utilitarianism. The greatest good for the most people, correct? We put it into the weight, I mean the balance. If many people get benefit because of your action, right? Because of your consequences of action, so you implement. Focus on the consequences. Yes, you are looking at what will happen if you do so. That is consequences of action. Seeks happiness for ourselves and others. The most people act utilitarianism and role utilitarianism. Whereas Kant theory use reason to determine what is right. You use reasons to determine what is right, but not the consequences. There are certain commands that have to be followed. You have to follow always certain commands. For an example, be truthful. And reality is constant. Always you have to tell truth. You have to tell truth. Universally, I mean, it is a universal principle. Everywhere same. Right? The common thing that utilitarian and the Kantian theory, both try to define what is moral. What is moral? Now, the utilitarian try to define the moral by looking at the consequences. If more people get happy, that action is the moral. The Kantian is thinking not the consequences, thinking of taking the reasons. And he determined based on that. Nothing is related to religions or anything. Yeah. All are clear? We are looking at still two theories, right? The utilitarian and the duty theory. We compare, we look at a different perspective in different ways, looking from top, looking from back, looking from side, and trying to understand this very well. Yeah. Now, similar to duty theory, I mean the Kantian theory or the Ross theory, another theory coming up in this area is right theory. That also falls in deontological theory. Under deontological theory, we talk about the Kantian theory, Ross theory, and the right theory now. What is right theory? Right theory states that an action is acceptable if it respects the human rights of everyone involved. Yeah, everyone involved. There is still now, hope everybody got everyone involved in everyone in the society. Now, think of based on right theory, is it right for Israel to attack Syria? Based on utilitarian theory, is it right Israel to attack Gaza? Based on Kantian theory, is it ethical to Israel to attack Gaza or Syria? Just think of. Yeah. Even when you are making some engineering creation, the AI, artificial intelligence, or you make a robot. So is it ethical based on utilitarian theory or a duty theory? Yeah. Now, this theory basically, the right theory basically is saying you can do any action, you can take any action, and it is acceptable if it respects the human rights of everyone involved. In this class, we have many people, and any action can be acceptable if it is not violating anybody's right. Yeah. So that kind of action is ethically acceptable. That is what the right theory is saying. But still we have a problem with this theory as well. How to decide what to do when the right of two or more people comes to conflict. That is what I said. Now, Israel and Gaza. Now we may think that whether the Israel is doing ethical or unethical thing by attacking Gaza. But by doing so, they protecting their rights. But what about the people living in Gaza? So it is now conflicting. Yeah. Okay. Now we will have a look on two YouTube videos that will basically explain the Kantian theory. Carefully look at, since this is already shared, you all better repeat couple of time and watch again and again till you understand properly. So everything what I explain is included in this video. Yeah. Can you see the screen? Can you see?
One answer comes from the work of German philosopher Immanuel Kant, who is the most widely known exponent of an ethical theory called deontology. Deontology comes from the Greek word deon, meaning duty. This means that actions are either good or bad, right or wrong, based on whether they are consistent with moral duties. In Immanuel Kant's philosophy, we are bound by a universal law, a set of duties that are entirely rational and don't allow for any exceptions. Immanuel Kant believed that ethics was about having a good will, that is, a will to do what's right simply because it's right. Not because it will feel good, not because it'll produce the best outcomes, but because that's what must be done. Let's say you've made a promise to another professional that you'll partner with them on a business project. Later on, you find out that partnering with that person might tarnish your reputation. They're known to play fast and loose with the rules, and serious professionals want nothing to do with them. Many people would advise you to cut ties. Deontology reminds us that we're obliged to keep our promises, even when
They look. Now, the Kantian theory, the universal, and it is consistent, is taking an example saying that you're having a business with another partner. After some times, you feel that you understand that your name is tarnishing by your partner. Now, what to do? To break the tie up or to continue? Now, as per the Kantian theory, so you have to keep the promises. The initial promise is to go together. So, at your personal cost, you have to continue based on this Kantian theory. Yeah.
they come at a personal cost. At the core of deontology is the idea that we shouldn't make special exceptions for ourselves or for other people in our decision making. Immanuel Kant encouraged people to consider, would it be rational for everyone to act this way? Could what I propose to do be a universal rule? Think about promises, for example. If everybody broke their promises when it suited them, the concept of promises would be meaningless. It's not that breaking promises produces a bad set of outcomes. For Kant, it's just not rational to allow everybody to break their word, which means we shouldn't do it ourselves. Deontology also reminds us about the dignity of every person. Kant argued that we could never treat a person as if they were a tool. Sometimes it's tempting to use people, staff, clients, friends, and family, without showing respect for their rights, needs, or intrinsic dignity. Deontology reminds us to take account of the importance of every person as equal to our own. Are there ways you make special exceptions for yourself? Can you think of times when you tend to use people as mere tools, rather than respecting them as people with will, agency, and dignity of their own? Are there some basic rules that must never be broken, no matter the cost?
They look. Now, the Kant is also talking about the dignity of people. So Kant is basically saying, so you should respect all the people. You should not consider human beings as tools. Yeah. So we have to think of their rights. Based on that only we need to take the decision, and it is universal. We'll look at the other one as well. Can you see the screen? Yeah.
Have you ever wondered what actually defines something as good or bad? I'll share with you two scenarios, and we will discuss it afterward. Imagine this. A neighbor I'm on good terms with decided to bring a little joy into my day by gifting my dog some high-quality salmon treats. Well, it turned out he didn't know my dog has a salmon allergy, which caused a sick pup and an unexpected overnight stay at the vet. I was pretty disheartened. Despite the neighbor's good intentions, it ended up doing more harm than good. My dog...
Now, this video is taking two examples. The first example is his neighbor with good intention giving some plants. Yeah, but what is happening now? His dog is allergy to that particular plant. Yeah. So his intention is to not to harm, to give this plant with good intention, but so the dog is getting hurt because of the allergy. Yeah. Listen again.
Imagine this. A neighbor I'm on good terms with decided to bring a little joy into my day by gifting my dog some high-quality salmon treats. Well, it turned out he didn't know my dog has a salmon allergy, which caused a sick pup and an unexpected overnight stay at the vet. I was pretty disheartened. Despite the neighbor's good intentions, it ended up doing more harm than good. My dog had a tough time, and I was left feeling dispirited. Now, there's
Got it? The salmon traits is having allergies with that dog. Yeah. So, but the intention is not to harm the dog. For the benefit of dog only, the neighbor has given the salmon trait. Right.
time,
Next.
and I was left feeling dispirited. Now, there's another neighbor who isn't exactly a fan of mine. Trying to stir up trouble, he sneaks into my garden at night and releases a harmful substance, hoping to make my dog sick and me sad. But guess what? Thanks to a fortunate twist of fate, chilly weather that night, my dog decides to stay inside. Surprisingly, the substance does wonders for my persistent insect problem. Despite the neighbor's not-so-friendly intentions, it turns out he unintentionally helped me achieve a pest-free garden. However, most of us would still see his act.
Now, here in the other example, what has happened, one of the neighbor again is putting some poisonous material into the garden, thinking that his dog and the neighbor get harm because of that poison. So his intention is bad. But what has happened? Luckily, on that day, his dog was inside because of bad weather, and this poisonous material created a good thing that he was having some insect issue in the garden that has been resolved completely. Yeah. So now I guess he is looking at the moral of these actions, the ethicality of these actions based on the theories.
actions
Listen.
as morally questionable. For most, his behavior is viewed as wrongdoing. But what determines the morality of an action? Intentions or consequences? I think most of us will answer that the intention is more important. Thus, most of us tend to think like deontologists. Deontology is an ethical theory that states some actions are right or wrong in themselves, regardless of their consequences. Thus tend to think
Look at now here you can understand the difference between the utilitarian and the Kantian theory. The utilitarian theory is looking at consequences of the action. Now, based on the consequences of the action, the first one, the given the salmon trait, is having a good intention, but the results gave bad. So ethically wrong as per the utilitarian theory. But if we really look at the intention of the first neighbor is good. So based on the Kantian theory, so it is an ethically acceptable action. Right? Now, right, this is the difference between the utilitarian and the Kantian theory. Listen carefully.
like deontologists. Deontology is an ethical theory that states some actions are right or wrong in themselves, regardless of their consequences. Deontological ethics is contrasted with consequentialism, which is an ethical theory that asserts what makes an action right or wrong is the outcome of the action, not the action itself. Many of us prioritize intentions when assessing morality, focusing on whether the act itself is inherently good or bad rather than its outcomes. Positive consequences from a negative deed don't automatically make it virtuous, and vice versa. Take the example of the first neighbor causing destruction. Despite the negative outcomes, many of us might still see him as morally upright due to his good intentions. This suggests that our initial judgment of an action's morality is primarily based on intentions, more than the results following thereafter. The German philosopher Immanuel Kant is the most important thinker associated with deontology. Kant's key argument is based on the belief that the morality of actions is not determined by their consequences, but rather by the motives of the individual performing them. According to Kant, ethics is about having a good will, where the only way an action is deemed morally right is the will or motive of the person involved. As it is, deontological ethics sounds pretty logical, but at the same time, it's a utopian idea, and I'll explain why. As mentioned earlier, according to deontological ethics, certain actions are inherently right or wrong regardless of their consequences. If an act is considered immoral, there are no circumstances under which the act can be considered morally acceptable. For example, individuals are obligated to tell the truth even if doing so might lead to unfavorable results. Kant strongly argues that a lie always harms another. If not a human being, then it nevertheless does harm to humanity in general, as it undermines the very source of right. But imagine that by telling a lie, you could save a life. Would you do it? Kant would probably say you shouldn't, insisting that you're morally obligated not to lie, even if a murderer is at your door asking about your family. This leads us to a significant point. There are things that are considered morally wrong, regardless of the circumstances. For example, it is always wrong to kill someone, no matter what the outcomes might be, right? Now, imagine if we could go back in time to prevent someone like Hitler from causing harm, perhaps by intervening while he was a teenager. According to consequentialism, there's no doubt that it would be the right thing to do because the result is saving the lives of millions. However, deontologists, including Kant, would view this act as immoral. In their ethical framework, murder is inherently wrong, regardless of potential positive outcomes such as saving lives.
Look at now. They take. Can you all hear me? Can you all hear me? Can. Okay, right. Now here, now this video is taking a very good example. If we kill Hitler at his young stage, so you should be able to save millions of people, as he basically created the Second World War. But as per the Kantian theory, you can't kill a person because your intention is killing. Killing is wrong. So whether you should not consider the consequences. If we consider the utilitarian theory or consequentialism, yes, that is acceptable. Killing Hitler will be acceptable. By doing so, you should be able to save millions of people. Yeah.
Consider another scenario. A person with a gun enters a school, putting innocent lives at risk. In such a situation, the only way to stop them might involve shooting, which we universally agree is morally wrong. However, faced with this dilemma, should the guard shoot? Many would argue that it's the right thing to do. These examples highlight the moral dilemmas inherent in deontological ethics, where certain actions are always considered wrong, even in situations that seem to justify them. That's it for today. Let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like the video.
Right. Now, this is the issue. Now, they are taking another example.
Thank you, and stay.
The person with a gun coming and try to shoot the students in the school. So whether the guard to use his gun and to kill. Now, as per Kantian theory, so you can't, because the killing is universally wrong. It is a wrong moral. But if you think of a utilitarian theory or a right theory, yes, because it is for the benefit of many people as per the utilitarian, and basically, if you put it to the right theory look at the violation or the rights of all the concerned people. So you have to do something. Okay, we'll now move back to our presentation. So far, you all have any issue? Okay, all clear. Hmm? Right. Now, the theories we discussed so far, having some framework intended to guide our moral behavior. Right? We can apply those theories to ethical dilemmas such as, is it okay to steal? You are robbing something. Is it okay to rob? Right? If you think of utilitarian theory, you look at the consequences of action. Your family is starving and family is dying of starving. You steal a loaf of bread and feeding your family. The family is surviving as per the consequences, as per the utilitarian theory or a consequentialism that is morally right, morally correct. But if you look at the, the Kant theory, what Kant theory say? Your action is universally acceptable. If it is wrong for all the time, all the place, for everybody. So it is a wrong action. Right? Now we are going to look at a very different theory to these two theories, that is the Aristotle's theory related to ethics. Aristotle takes a different approach to both Kant and utilitarianism. Kant and utilitarianism both giving some formula for what to do. It explains what we have to do. But Aristotle is concerning about what sort of person we should be. See the difference from the beginning. Now, the Kant or a utilitarian theory, they don't talk about person. They talk about action. Utilitarian theory look at the consequences. The Kant is looking at the intention. Whereas Aristotle look at the person. What kind of a person we should be. So if a virtuous person would not steal in a particular set of circumstances, then it is wrong to steal in all these circumstances. That is how he explained the moral or ethics, right? He used a term virtue. We will see what is virtue. He's saying a person, a virtuous person, the ethically correct person, if not steal in a particular set of circumstances, then it is wrong to steal in all those circumstances. Right? He is looking at a person. Clear? Yeah. Right. This theory we call virtue theory. Right? This theory we call virtue theory. This is the last theory that we are going to discuss. The virtue ethical theory holds that ethical value of individual is determined by his character. Yeah. The character refers to virtues, inclinations, and intentions that dispose of a person to be ready to act ethically. Okay. That is the basically the summary of virtue theory. So before we come to this theory in detail, so we'll look at some background. This Aristotle's virtue ethics can be gleaned from his seminal work titled Nicomachean Ethics. He has done a good study that is called Nicomachean Ethics. Nicomachean. Nicomachean Ethics. This book is undoubtedly the first systematic study of ethics in Western civilization. It's the first study done in Western civilization about ethics. In this book, Aristotle offers us a principle of conduct that would guide human in attaining good life. Right? This is a kind of a rational thing, very similar to what Lord Buddha said. So we will relate that one also. Yeah. Now, it is worthwhile for us to begin this discussion about the Aristotle's virtue ethics by contrasting, by comparing it is with Plato's take on ethics. Plato, another philosopher. You know, the Plato, as everybody knows very well, Plato following his master Socrates. So now, so we were thinking that the This philosophy is coming from Aristotle. Before Aristotle, the Plato has discussed about ethics. Before Plato, his master discussed about ethics. His master is Socrates. The Socrates believed that, or the Plato believed that, the moral evaluation of a daily life assume a good life which is independent of experience, personality, circumstances. Now, the Plato or Socrates, both they believing that good life is independent of our experience. It doesn't matter our experience. It doesn't matter our day-to-day life. It doesn't matter our whatever the circumstances. It's independent. But Aristotle is having a different view. For Aristotle, moral principles are imminent in our daily activities. Moral principles are happening in our daily activities. And he is thinking this moral principles can be discovered only through carefully studying of them. That is what he is telling. Now, he is telling the character. He is telling about character. If a virtuous person would not steal in a particular set of circumstances, then it is wrong to steal in all these circumstances. Right? For Aristotle, the moral principles are with our day-to-day life. These moral principles we can identify by carefully studying our day-to-day activities. Yeah. Okay. Right. Now we discuss about a term good life. What is good life? Now the Plato believed that the concept of good life is universal and exists beyond our personal experience, personality, or circumstances, as we discuss. In his view, moral values are fixed and unchanged, independent of our daily life. Whatever comes, that is what Plato and his the guru was believing. But Aristotle, on the other hand, arguing that moral principles are found with our own daily actions and experience. He believed we can understand what is right or good only by carefully studying people's behavior in real life situation. In our real life situation, how we behave, so that is the moral. Okay, we'll take an example. What does it mean to live a good life? Now, everybody wants to live a good life. What does it mean to live a good life? What is your opinion about the good life? I mean, in terms of ethics. Okay, we'll look at what is Plato's view. Plato's answer would say, the answer is based on universal truths like justice, wisdom, and virtue, and exists independent of anyone's personal life or a situation. That is what Plato is saying. It is universal, like the Kantian theory. For instance, Being honest is good no matter what. You have to be honest. You can't tell lie. Regardless of who you are or what circumstances you face. Whether the ex-murderer staying in front of you and asking where Bob is, you have to tell the truth. That is what the Plato also say. But Aristotle, he would say you can only understand what living a good life means by looking at how people actually live. He is taking this ethics is to more practical things. Yeah. For example, he might observe that being honest depending on the situation. Sometimes telling truth is good, but other times kindness or a loyalty might take priority. He doesn't say that you should lie. He say truth is good, but sometimes based on the situation, the kindness can come first, or the loyalty can come first. Right? He believed moral principles grow out of real experiences and can vary depending on the context. Right? That is why it is so difficult. There is no clear-cut answer. You can't say 1 + 1 = 2, something like that. In mathematics, 1 + 1 is equal everywhere, but equal to 2 everywhere. But these social sciences, it's difficult. It's complex. Right? Now, it is for this reason that Aristotle began his ethical inquiry with an empirical study, because he is always believing it is coming from the society. Yeah. Hope you all can hear me. Now, Aristotle argued that what people fundamentally desire is happiness. We want happiness. We want happiness all the time. We want happiness everywhere. So everybody wants happiness. He used another term for happiness, eudaimonia. EUDAIMONIA, eudaimonia. And Aristotle believes that the happiness or eudaimonia is the ultimate human good. For you to live a good life means you have to be happy. Achieving that happiness is the ultimate human good. And you want to be happy, and others also wants to be happy. That is the ultimate human good. However, Aristotle warns that people's opinion about the concept of happiness considerably vary. What you happy, what somebody else happy. It is varied. We sometimes talk about the utility. If you are having the first cup of tea in the morning, so how much you are happy? It is not actually happy, it is a pleasure. It is a temporary. The pleasure is temporary. Yeah. So similarly, so when you are taking the next tea, your pleasure is little less, that you call utility is less. Yeah. Now Aristotle warning people's opinion about concept of happiness is varying. Now, if we recall, the central question in Plato and Socrates' ethics is what kind of life should one live? What kind of life should somebody live? Aristotle followed this line of question in his study called Nicomachean Ethics, right? As we can see, just as Plato and Socrates, Aristotle was concerned about good life. Now, all thinking about good life. However, instead of asking about how should one live, Aristotle was more concerned about the nature of the good life. What is the nature of good life? What is good life? Right? Thus, Aristotle, in effect, asked the question, what is the nature of happiness? What does happiness consist in? It must be noted that Aristotle did not just ask about the nature of happiness. It is not just asking. In Nicomachean Ethics, he also raised the question concerning the conditions of its attainment, which eventually led Aristotle to the decision of virtue. How to attain this? Now, we come to a term called virtue, right? Understand this part clearly. Now, Aristotle's virtue ethics, therefore, is ultimately tied to a full understanding of the nature of happiness as humanity's ultimate goal, as well as the concept of virtue. I know that you're having confusion now. What is virtue? We'll come back. Now, Aristotle's virtue ethics is ultimately tied to a full understanding of the nature of happiness. That is the humanity's ultimate goal, to be happy. How we are going to be happy? By having virtue. Virtue is basically a good character. Yeah, good character. As virtue theorist, Aristotle's concern, therefore, is not only about right or wrong, but with virtues like courage or cowardice, wisdom or ignorance, justice and injustice, weakness of the character or the strength of the character is looking at. Now, in this discussion now, we can draw two major principles that will guide us in understanding Aristotle's virtue theory. Two principles. The one is eudaimonia, the other one is virtue. What is eudaimonia? Is happiness. The virtue is the correct thing. Yeah, character. Now we'll turn to discuss these concepts. Okay. Take a note that now we are going to focus on how Aristotle developed a concept of eudaimonia or the happiness that appeals to a concept of human nature. And the way in which Aristotle developed an account of virtue that can show the idea that the life of virtue is the life of eudaimonia, or the happiness. In simply, as is well known, Socrates understands virtue as major source of happiness. How the happiness comes? From the virtue. Yeah. If you recap the Plato's concept, Plato continued this tradition and argued the moral virtue is vital to the rational soul of a man. It is universal and independent. Although Aristotle followed Socrates and Plato's agenda, this concept of happiness is differ from Socrates and Plato, because for Aristotle, happiness consists only in virtuous activity. That is coming from good character. That is related to what we are doing in our society. Happiness, which most of Aristotle's interpreters call eudaimonia, is the ultimate end of human life. That is what we know. Everybody wants the happiness, as we repeatedly say. This happiness, or the ultimate end, is genuinely desire for its own sake, without a qualification, not to show somebody. This is required genuinely. Right? Genuinely, we need to be happy. We need to make everybody happy, not to show. So actions which precede this end are the most valuable and cannot be superseded by any action driven by ordinary kind of ends. Of course, actions which results in honor, wealth, power, definitely part of men's inclination to seek happiness as pleasure. You want honor, you want money, you want some power. There is some inclination to seek for happiness or a pleasure, but unfortunately, this could not be the end which offers true happiness. There you don't get the true happiness. Like eudaimonia, or a happiness, pleasure is only the good. That is why Aristotle does not condemn man's desire for pleasure. He is okay with pleasure. Pleasure is temporary, because it is a significant part of human flourishing. The pleasure is significant part of human flourishing. For human to live, human to develop, the pleasure has to be. But that is not the ultimate. For Aristotle, the desire and the action that leads to pleasure only assume limited value. Therefore, the satisfaction that one gets this action cannot be truly called happiness. The happiness is the ultimate end. For Aristotle, these actions which only lead humans into a pit of two opposing vices. Now, what is vice? Vices are either excess or deficiency. Drive them away from the ultimate end, ultimate happiness. If you all are Buddhist, now think of what Lord Buddha said about a life, and look at the similarity what Aristotle is saying. Right. Now we'll come to the definition of virtue. For Aristotle, only virtuous acts can lead to true happiness that we were maintaining from the beginning. Virtue is defined as a behavior showing high moral standards or general quality of goodness in a person. So that is how he defined. Showing high moral standards. Virtue is defined as a behavior. It's a kind of action, character, showing high moral standards. Always, genuinely, not to show others. Yeah. It's a general quality of goodness in a person. For an example, virtue of patience or a truthfulness. Yeah. The patience or a truthfulness is a virtue. As defined by Aristotle, we can say virtue is opposite of vice. Vice means V-I-C-E, vice. Right? Vice in this context should not be literally understood with the specific context of social vice like drug addiction, excessive cigarette smoking, or a gambling. Now, we were saying virtue is opposite of vice, and we were saying vice is basically having a deficiency or an excess. We were saying virtue is the middle. So if somebody is smoking less, somebody is extremely smoking, those are vices, two extremes. We have to go middle for the virtue. The virtue, that's mean to smoke moderately. So you should not get those kind of examples. But the vices are extreme ends of the virtue. Right? It is for this reason that Aristotle claimed that virtues are the mean or the middle ground between the excess of one side and the deficiency of the other. Excess of one side and the deficiency at the other. The virtue is middle. Yeah. For example, if a moral agent maintains patience or a good temper and rejects irascibility or lack of spirit, then he said to have possessed virtue. Got it? Somebody is maintaining patience or good temper. He rejects lack of spirit, wisdomness, lack of wisdomness. That is you call virtue. That's for Aristotle. Virtues categorically serve as the essential element of man's moral behavior. As we can see, the central concept of Aristotle's virtue ethic is that virtue or the mean is the key to happiness. Yeah, that is the key to happiness. Look at this table. This table will help us understand the relation between the virtue and vices between in the Aristotelian sense. How Aristotle see, explain, define. This is vice of deficiency, virtue, vice of excess. Look at the first one. Cowardice. What is cowardice? You are scared. You have no courage. You have no guts. You don't move forward. You don't try. Cowardice. That is, you lack something. That is deficiency. It is a vice. And the other side is without looking at the risk, you try to do everything, foolhardiness, recklessness. What person should practice, what person's behavior should be a virtue. Virtue is the moderation, middle level, mean, that is courage. You have to have the courage. You should not be, your character should not be cowardice or foolhardiness. Then look at the second one, insensibility. Licentiousness and temperance. Some people doesn't feel, they don't understand. They are not having sense what is happening. So you can't be like that. Licentiousness. Licentiousness. So you are so sensible. Extreme. You can't be like that. We say a tempered person, not exciting things with things. Temperance. You should come to a moderation level. Another virtue, stinginess. No generosity at all. You don't give anything. Prodigality. So without rational. So you just waste things. You just spend everything. So you can't be like that. You have to come to the middle. The middle is the moderation. Middle is the mean. That is the virtue. You should be generous. not the stingy, not the prodigality. Yeah. So now let us continue our discussion with virtue as a good habit. The formation of the moral virtue is essentially to Aristotelian ethics. This is due to the fact that moral agent can only attain happiness by being consistently living good life or acting habitually in accordance with good life. Now, you should not go to these vices, the extremes. You have to be in middle. The middle are the virtues. That is the behavior. And this, as per the Aristotle's this virtue ethics theory, he says you have to consistently live with good life. That's mean you have to consistently be happy. For you to be consistently be happy, for you to behave consistently in virtue. Yeah, you have to have the virtual actions as a habit. Thus, therefore, a good habit is instrumental to the development of virtue because it is considered to be the consistent pattern of doing virtuous actions. So Aristotle writes, we are adapted by nature to receive these virtues and are made perfect by habit. In this sense, though virtue is already part of our natural inclinations, human being still needs to the habit of doing good or for him to become virtuous. What we must do then is to consistently practice doing virtuous acts to develop a habit. Right? These are the virtuous, the list of virtuous shown in the table, not the vices. We should continuously practice doing virtuous. For instance, we acquire the virtue of patience by repeatedly integrating it into our deliberate action or by being consistently patient. Whatever comes, we have to practice, be patient. In similar way, we can obtain the virtue of courage by maintaining it with the purview of the mean while avoiding rashness or a cowardice. We should not cowardice, we should not take the action of rashness. Therefore, our action can only be morally good and right if there is a habitual practice of virtues. That is the message. Yeah. Now, how to formulate of virtue? How to formulate the virtue? The formation of virtue or a good habit has two stages. The first stage, the habit of contemplation or the education of thought for the formation of intellectual virtues. So we should learn the virtues. The second, the habit of the actual practice of moral virtues. Then you have to practice it. First, you have to learn, then you have to practice, then you come to ultimate happiness or eudaimonia. Once you come to that, you are living good life. That is the character that we need developed within. That is what Aristotle is saying. Once you become virtuous person, so you will do only ethical things. That's the theory, right? Okay. Now, um, we are running out of time, but I need to share um, I need to share you all this video. Yeah.
Aristotle's virtue.
Can you all see the screen?
To ethics. Aristotle's virtue ethics. Aristotle's virtue ethics can be gleaned from his seminal work titled Nicomachean Ethics. This book is undoubtedly the first systematic study of ethics in Western civilization. In this book, Aristotle offers principles of conduct that would guide humans in attaining the good life. It is worthwhile to begin our discussion of Aristotle's virtue ethics by contrasting it with Plato's take on ethics. As is well known, Plato, following his master Socrates, believed that the moral evaluations of daily life presuppose a good life which is independent of experience, personality, and circumstances. Aristotle rejected this view. For Aristotle, moral principles are immanent in our daily activities and can be discovered only through a careful study of them. It is for this reason that Aristotle begins his ethical inquiry with an empirical study of what it is that people fundamentally desire. Aristotle argues that what people fundamentally desire is happiness, or eudaimonia. And Aristotle believes that happiness or eudaimonia is the ultimate human good. However, Aristotle warns that people's opinions about the concept of happiness considerably vary. Now, if we recall, the central question in Plato and Socrates' ethics is, what kind of life should one live? Aristotle followed this line of questioning in his Nicomachean Ethics. As we can see, just as Plato and Socrates, Aristotle was also concerned about the good life. However, instead of asking about how should one live, Aristotle was more concerned about the nature of the good life.
Okay,
Thus, Aristotle in effect asked
I guess you all can watch this video. This basically explaining the Aristotle's virtue theory completely. We discuss this very clearly, right? So I want to share you all now as a summary. So Aristotle discussed about um, the mean, the balance, the two wisest side, uh, either side of the virtue. So all the time, what we have to practice is the middle or the virtue, and it has to be continuously practiced. Yeah, here we have to continuously practice the virtue. So in this slide, we have taken an example of cowardice or a recklessness. What we have to do is to practice the middle, that is courage. Right. Now, before we wind it up, so I extracted this diagram from one of the published article by these philosophers. It's a recent article. Now, they basically discuss about ethics. It is something very similar to what Aristotle explained. So this research looking at Buddhist virtue ethics perspective. Buddhist virtue ethics perspective. In Buddhist virtue ethics perspective, the first it says interdependent individual. First, you love, you be kind, you be compassionate, you be sympathetic, you joy to yourself. And you act to get those things for your immediate family members and to friends. Then you expand this to distance persons. Maybe you're known or unknown people in the world. Then you expand the same actions, same thinking to non-human beings, maybe animals, plants, then to biosphere, then to future beings. That is what Lord Buddha said. The virtue ethics perspective of Lord Buddha. That is the same thing that Aristotle also saying. Don't you think so? Aristotle also saying, you have to be a virtuous person. The virtue mean the middle of the vices. What Lord Buddha also said, not to be extreme, not to have anything lack, not to have anything excess. You have to go in the middle path. Right? Once you achieve to that level, so you will become a virtuous person. Once you become virtuous person,
your action is always ethical. Right? In virtue ethics, we can look at individual character ethics, we can look at work character ethics, we can look at professional character ethics. Right? In next week, we will look at how these theories been used in our day-to-day life. We will take up few examples and we'll see the ethics, written down ethics in engineering professions. So next week we are studying, we are approaching to engineering ethics education. We focus some case studies, right? And we examine the various issues that engineers might face in actual practices. And we use those case studies for making good decisions using our moral theories. Right? What are the moral theories we learn? 3 theories we learn. The utilitarian theory, the deontological theory, and the virtue theory. Those are the 3 categories of virtue theories we learn. Right? So we will look at how the application in next week. Yeah. Only few more slides here. So with that, we should be able to understand how we apply. Yeah. Everybody clear? Any questions? Anything to be clarified? All right. Any question? Okay. With that, we'll wind it up. And next week, we will look at some practical examples. It will not take much time. Then I will introduce you all assignment. That will be the final assignment. From next week, the next week will be the last lesson, right? With that, we covered all the areas under sociology and the ethics that we need to look at. Okay, thank you so much. You all want to see attendance again? So some is having a questions. Could you please confirm, is it necessary for all team members to upload the assignment individually? No. So one person uploading that is more than enough, right? So if everybody's name are there, right? So the one group member, otherwise we will have, significant number of assignments. The repeating the same thing. So don't upload. If one person is uploading, that's enough, right? Only thing, so the names of the group members has to be mentioned there, right? You said you couldn't mark attendance. So I think this is expired now. You have to create another one. Can you all see the screen with verification code?
Okay, so I will keep the attendance for another 5 minutes and then we'll cut off. Thank you so much.